Hey Storm Nation, I'm Steve Klumpkin, and we've got a real special event for you today. I've got a couple of special guests here next to me, and if you're watching this video, it's probably because you are preparing to bowl the Open Championships tournament in Las Vegas, Nevada this year. Now, I've got a couple of experts here. We're going to go through and talk about the importance and what you need to be thinking about as you're trying to arrange and build your arsenal of bowling balls to go compete in the tournament. On my right is Steve Richter. Steve Richter, you're a three-time Open Championships champion, three times titleist. You won three different events too, I believe it was, wasn't it?
A 2005 doubles, team all events, and the 2011 team event.
Yeah. Which one of those stands out the most to you as far as memory-wise?
Doubles for sure. That one just had the most emotion, and it was the first one.
Yeah.
And it was the first time we actually took the lead, which we had been trying for years to do, and it's the one that I still remember the most today.
Oh, cool. Now, you said trying for years. How many years have you been bowling the Open Championships?
This will be my 28th.
28 years. Okay, so 28 years of knowledge and experience in titles, three titles as well. So knowing what it takes to actually win a title there and knowing what goes into preparing for and competing at the highest level at this tournament. So Steve, thanks for joining us here. And then on my left, I've got Alex Hoskins. Alex, it's been a while now since you kicked my butt at the Masters. I still haven't gotten over it.
Hold on, man. If we win this, I bet we'll get it. Take it down, man. Get in the house.
But no, Alex, we've bowled together too at the Open Championships for a number of years now.
Yep, definitely. This will be my 7th year, so still kind of getting my feet wet and trying to figure out what's the best for the tournament, basically. So we'll kind of get my perspective, a little bit of Steve's perspective, and kind of see what we think.
Yeah, one of the things, and if you're watching this video, you've probably also watched Alex on many different videos talking about the importance of understanding the components of a layout system, the pin buffer layout system, and what each of those numbers mean. We've had a great reach with the views for the articles and for the videos that we've done, where Alex goes through and breaks down exactly what each number does. And so that's also going to be part of our discussion here, is going to be selecting the right balls, but it's also selecting the proper layout.
Right, yep. It's all important to get everything kind of matched up together in order to get the ball to see the lane the right way. And when the patterns are as difficult as they are at the Open Championships, you got to have it right.
Yeah, they are. And that's a great segue here, which is the patterns at the Open Championships. We have seen some similarities for the last several years. Now, of course, they don't announce in advance what the oil pattern is going to be, and you don't know going into the tournament what you're going to be bowling on. But we have seen some characteristics the last couple of years, so that's a little bit about what we want to talk about today. I'll kind of kick it off a little bit with the team event. The last couple of years, it has been a very challenging, flatter meaning that a little less oil in the middle, a little bit more to the outside, a demanding condition for the last several years, safe to say. And it's also been maybe a medium length pattern, which a lot of times that lends itself to be a little bit of a challenging aspect too, because there's multiple ways to attack it. So how did your team attack them in the team event last couple of years, Steve?
I think the last couple of years the patterns have changed where there's built-in friction right from the start. When our two teams got together many years ago, the thing that we did differently, I think, than most is we huddled in one spot, wore them in, and then exploited whatever we created. Well, now that hook is right there, right from the start. And so we've taken a different strategy where we kind of let people go where they want to on the lane, where they feel comfortable, but it all has to funnel to the spot where the lane dictates it has to go.
Oh, okay. All right. And Alex, just your thoughts. So you've bowled exceptionally well in many years now in the team event, especially. I don't know how many times you shot 700 in the team, but it's been more than 3. It's definitely got to get. What have you seen, or what's your thoughts on that?
I know it's crazy too, because team is traditionally kind of the harder of the patterns. It's usually a little bit shorter, and since it's flatter, there's more hook down lane. So for me, personally, I think I have a little bit more success with that, because I like staying in the bigger balls with more surface that are going to get into the roll phase a little bit sooner.
Okay.
Come off the end of the pattern a little bit more.
Bigger ball meaning like higher diff or asymmetrical or something.
Yep, absolutely. Designed to kind of create more friction on the lane and get going forward a little bit more off the end of the pattern.
And this core shape has been extremely good for you in the Open Championships and at the Masters.
Well,
I know.
you can't beat it.
So next, let's talk a little bit about the singles and doubles pattern. You know, I mean, I had the very fortunate experience of shooting 300 right out of the gate last year in Syracuse, and I can tell you I was using about as much surface as I could possibly put on the ball. I used 500 pad on it heavily before I started, and even you know, right out through the gates, I had to make sure I got the ball into a roll, but I was able to play a more direct line from the outside and try and just, you know, the biggest thing for me from the get-go from singles and doubles was keeping the angles closed, right from the get-go. It was definitely a longer pattern, a heavier volume of oil, and you know, for me, like I say, starting out from right out of the gates with using a ball with a lot more surface was really key for getting comfortable and getting a nice motion from the start and getting loose. And once you start getting some strikes in practice, and even as the first few frames of competition, it kind of loosens up your swing a little bit. Then you start making some better shots because, you know, you still have that. You got to battle some nerves there as well too that goes on. Sure. What's your experience been for singles and doubles? You've won the doubles, and you were talking about that a little bit earlier. What have you seen the last few years?
I think this last year they certainly felt tighter. You had to be a lot straighter, bigger balls, more surface, just to get the ball to slow down and face up to the pocket. You can almost feel a little bit like you could play the hold a little bit. There was so much volume there until the lane wore in, and then you moved slowly. Like you, I used a lot of surface. One ball I started with had 360, the other one had 500 on it. And at the same time, I know from one of the sources on the Team Oliphant's team that they kept their surfaces very smooth. So it's a matter of matching up to your style, where you guys elect to play on the lane, and doing it as a team. You don't want one cowboy that's out there trying to wreck the lanes to do their own thing. Everybody's got to get on the same page and do the same thing.
That is true. You know, there were a couple times we've seen over the years, and you know, there's so many great bowlers go and compete at the highest level in the Open Championships, and they'll come back and they'll say, "Hey, how'd you do?" And they say, you know, we had a plan, but you know, our leadoff bowler was playing the first arrow, our second guy was playing the second arrow, the next guy was playing fifth arrow, the next guy was playing the third arrow, and you know, one guy's keeping it tight, one guy's shooting it out to the gut, and before you know it, you know, we have absolutely no idea what's happening on the lane, and we're all confused. So I think working together is definitely not that everybody has to have the same style, but that you have to understand the differences in your game and then make the adjustments with your ball prep, but then kind of come together as a team, right, on how you're playing them. Not just the team event, but singles and doubles is still as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think teamwork is really a huge part of the Open Championships like that. And I think, Steve, that you hit it earlier with you don't necessarily, not everybody needs to play the exact same part of the lane in order to break it down. Each style is going to be slightly different in whether they have to be a little further left, a little further right, whether they're speed or rev dominant. But as long as they're funneling it to that same kind of spot down lane that the lane is asking for, you're going to see a really good result.
You can't create something. You know, this is physics, and physics always wins. So just take what the lane gives you and find a way to make yourself adapt to what it's telling you to do. It's real easy to get faked into playing a different part of the lane than anybody else is because you found it on one or two shots, but it's just about guaranteed to not work long term.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, we had the real fortune of having Jason Belmonte here not too long ago, and we have Specto here. We're in our test facility here at Storm, and Specto measures the ball position and location and speed as the ball goes down the lane. And one of the settings that when you were bowling with Jason, that it was really impressive to watch him bowl, not only the consistency and the speed, but we were talking about sort of that funneling effect, getting it to the same point. You know, if you're based off of where that break point's going to be, a lot of time is dictated by the length of the oil pattern. And he was able to adjust his launch angles, but down at 40 feet down the lane, I mean, it was within half a board for how many shots in a row?
It was more than 10, that's all I know. I've thrown a lot of shots on Specto, done a lot of ball testing, and it was pretty impressive to see what he could do.
But so many times, you're right, Steve, in the past we focused on, did I hit my target? Well, there's a lot of times you hit your target, but what angle you're going at is going to cause the more of a fan effect, where maybe you're hitting the third arrow, but down lane you've got a 5-board variance in your break point. We're talking the opposite. We want to get that funnel effect where you could have some variance through the front, but all going to the same point. So I think that's a really important point about you know, success at the Open Championships is figuring out where your break point is, not necessarily where your target is. So, All right, well, let's talk, the main point of this video here is talking about arsenal and about how do you set up a proper arsenal for competing in the tournament. And not everybody's going to have the exact same number of bowling balls that we're going to be bringing to the tournament. There's a lot of people that do fly as well and travel, and maybe they bring 2 or 3 balls. So there's a reason why we have these 3 specific bowling balls out here as far as like a bit of a benchmark for building an arsenal. And let's start first with the benchmark ball, Alex. Why don't we talk a little bit about, what is a benchmark ball? Why do we have the IQ Tour out here for that?
Yeah, in general, a benchmark ball, it's kind of going to be in the middle of your arsenal. It's pretty much your foundation. You're going to expand out from that. It's going to be a ball that you're pretty much the most comfortable with. You have a pretty good idea of what reaction it's going to give you based on what the lane is giving you. It's usually going to be a symmetrical, lower RG, solid cover, probably with quite a bit of surface, because that's just going to give you that really controllable and repeatable motion.
Yeah. Yep, so benchmark ball, number 1, that's the first ball. If you're going to bring 1 ball, you're going to have to bring a benchmark ball, something that you know exactly what it's going to do, predictable, that's not too close on either end of the lesser aggressive or the most aggressive. You're talking something that's going to be in the middle that you can really get a good read on, and something that's going to give you a little bit of versatility. Now, the next ball, let's talk about the Crux Prime. This is a high-end asymmetrical ball. When do we use, you termed it earlier, big ball.
Yes.
When do we use a bigger ball? And what is a bigger ball? Well, this is an example. It's an asymmetrical, lower RG, higher diff, very aggressive cover stock. On our Crux Prime, we have the new spec cover stock. This is a cover stock material we talked about in some previous videos. In the Bowler's Journal magazine, they actually had said and mentioned that this is what they feel to be the strongest bowling ball that Storm has ever produced. And it's guarantee you it's a completely unique shape. It's much different than anything else. It's great for heavy oil, and when you're going to the Open Championships, the chances are at some point in the singles and doubles, or it could be the team. It may be different this year. We don't know. But at some point, you're probably going to encounter a very heavy, high volume of oil, and it could be a long oil pattern. You're going to make sure you have a bowling ball that keeps you a little bit within your comfort range, so you're not just struggling where, your ball looks like a hockey puck going down the lane, and then all of a sudden what happens to your tension, all of a sudden the swing gets tight, you're just trying to make the ball hook. You got to make sure you have a ball that's very, very aggressive. And then on the other scales, we have our very aggressive ball, we have a benchmark ball. Now we also want to have a bowling ball that's more controllable. There are a couple great urethane options, the pitch black, and then we also have our new fever pitch out here, 2 different types of urethane. Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about that at all? Choice of urethane, or maybe how it can, maybe even be a dual ball where some people can use that to shoot their spares even.
Sure. There's been a lot of talk, probably the most I've seen recently on Facebook is, do I bring a urethane ball or not? And I think it depends largely on your style. I think it depends on what the pattern is like. And I think there's something unique about this building this year that the tournament is in, where I think urethane is an option. And that could play a role in blending out the fresh. I think it also could play a role in spare shooting. So you could eliminate, say, a plastic or a hard urethane ball in favor of this, and now you have another piece in your arsenal that serves a couple purposes.
Yeah. And some people, that we've done many of videos and had many discussions on what's the most important ball in your bag. We've asked professionals, we've asked high-end amateurs. The general consensus is your spare ball. That's the one ball. Me, myself, I've had the same spare ball for 19 years now, straight purple pearl flame, that I've just felt so comfortable with, and I guarantee you, when I go to a tournament, it's the very first ball I put in my bag. So I have a dedicated spare ball. I think a lot of people do. But it doesn't mean that you have to have a dedicated spare ball. You can have, if you get comfortable using a ball like a pitch black or a fever pitch, it may double for your spare ball. Norm Duke, for example, he doesn't use one. He uses a reactive ball, but he's like basically the only one on the planet that can get a ball to go that straight no matter how little amount of oil there is on the lane. Well regarded as the greatest spare shooter of all time. So if you're not Norm Duke, the rest of us were not Norm Duke, make sure you have a good spare ball that you're confident in, something that's going to throw, that's going to go straight, that you have, that you're going to make your spares, because it very rarely is it a strike fest at the Open Championships.
And I think something that, is really important with that is you will be throwing at significantly more spares at the Open Championship than you will in league or any tournament. These conditions are no joke. You are going to want to be good with your spare game. Nothing's worse than when you can't strike and then you start missing some easy spares. It just, like you said, it tightens your swing up even more, and it makes it even harder.
And it's hard to make up for missed spares when it's hard to strike. So it's very easy to shoot 150, 160, maybe even 140, when you miss 3 easy spares, and then you have a good shot that maybe leaves a pocket 7-10 and a bad shot that leaves a big 4. Before you know it, you're definitely scraping,
Trying to dig out the hole. That's a losing battle.
Dig your way out of a hole.
One of the number one problems that I see at the Open Championships especially is the balls being in the skid phase too long, just over skidding and either coming dead sideways off the end of the pattern or never hooking at all as they go down the lane. So
when does that happen? Is it surface related or core design?
I think it's a mixture of everything along with the style, and I think some people at some points are afraid to use a little bit more surface. Steve, you mentioned even 360 at the beginning of the, during practice or anything. Now, it's a bit extreme, but I mean, more surface is definitely going to help control the middle part of the lane a little bit better for them.
Just to expand on the too late, too sharp kind of thought that you want to avoid, I can recall 2 events in my last 27 years where I took something that probably shouldn't have been in my bag, and I got fooled into thinking I could just throw it better, and before you know it, I'm a game and a half past the point where I should have gotten out of that ball. So those don't even get consideration in my bag any longer. I'm looking for smooth and in various levels of strength. Now that could be a balance of symmetrical, asymmetrical, pin up, pin down, but again, that's built around my style and the intelligence that we've received about how the pattern is, how the lanes are playing, what our team strategy is, and ball selection is about the last thing that I end up picking once we have everything else from a knowledge standpoint kind of in place for a game plan.
But layouts. Let's talk about layouts. You talked about smooth. What's the difference between layouts that are designed to be more aggressive or more responsive or sharper or have more angularity, let's call it that, versus ones that are designed to be more smooth or more arcing? Alex, this is really one of your fortes in our sport. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
There's definitely times for both, but you're at the Open Championships, you're definitely going to be drawn more towards those earlier, smoother, more predictable layouts that get the ball into the roll a little bit quicker. Now, I'm a fan of more limited layouts. I don't think we need 5 or 6 different layouts on 5 or 6 different bowling balls. I like to stay with kind of a stronger layout, a medium layout, and a weaker layout. Try and use the strong layout on the fresh, medium as they kind of transition, and the weaker one on the burn.
Okay. Now, what would an example? What would one of those stronger or weaker types of layouts with you? Now, just remember, if we've got a lot of great info is already published here. So on our Storm News section on our website, we've got the articles that Alex has written already. We also have the great videos on YouTube on our Storm Bowling Balls channel, so you can go check that out as well for more information on the pin buffer system, like say a 4x4x2 or a 5x5x3 or something like that. What do you consider to be a weaker layout or a stronger layout for you? What are we talking?
Something stronger for me. I'm talking on the lower RG side of the curve, so maybe like a 2 or a 3 inch pin to PAP distance. I know you've had a lot of success with some balls with those kind of shorter pin to PAP distances because it lays that weight block down and kind of gets it into that smoother roll a little bit earlier. Shorter pin buffers as well, just to get it transitioning a little bit faster so that we can get it off the end of the pattern. That's going to help you control the fresh a little bit more. And like we were saying, the goal on the fresh is basically to avoid 150. Yeah. If you can grind out for 2-0 or 2-teen, you're going to be in a good spot because the lane is going to eventually open up a little bit.
Yeah. And how about as far as pin buffers? Let's talk about that just a little bit. A lot of people, when you look at, a lot of times we talk about the pin, a lot of times you'll see it maybe referenced relative to their grip line or their ring finger or their middle finger, or it's above or it's below or so. And you kind of touched on that a little bit as far as the pin buffer goes. What are we talking about when we're looking at a pin being above the fingers versus below the fingers? What kind of differences in ball motion or shape are we getting?
Yeah, if you use a shorter pin buffer, that's usually going to push the pin a little bit higher, so more above the fingers. Again, it's going to depend on your PAP and the pin to PAP distance that you select. But that's going to make the ball transition just a little bit faster. Basically, it's going to make the ball stronger overall. It's going to want to dig in the mid lane, get a little bit more rolly off the end of the pattern. Where if you increase that pin buffer distance, it's going to slow that transition down. You're actually taking more mass out of the top of the weight block, so it's getting it to kind of delay in its hook a little bit more. So it could be, I don't like when people term it one over the other as angular or smoother, because it all depends on your style and what you're bowling on. So it's not to say that one gives you one specific reaction all the time.
Yeah.
It's better to just understand what they're doing to the dynamics of the bowling ball to see how they're going to change direction down the lane. Now, the longer that buffer gets, in general, it's going to be better as the lanes start to break down, because there's more friction on the lane. You need to control that friction. Where on the fresh, if you have a little bit shorter buffer, it's going to want to try and get forward and create friction in the middle of the lane. If there's already friction in the middle of the lane, it might come off of it a little bit sideways and be a little bit hard to control.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a mixture of pin to PAP distances and pin buffers to create the right shape, especially when the patterns are that tough.
Okay, good stuff, Alex. Steve, do you have any thoughts on layouts? Anything to kind of add to that? What's worked for you in the past and worked for your teammates?
Sure, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I think the strategy we use is power with control. You want enough power that it's going to go through the pins the right way, but you have to be in control of how it comes off that spot. So a lot of times, I'll just use Mike Shady. He has one layout he uses, but he uses a sequence of bowling balls, and then he'll have one ball that's in there that's completely different than the others, but he's Mike Shady. I'm not nearly as accurate as he is, so I have a buffet of balls that are fairly significantly stepped down in strength, similar layouts, so that it's very obvious when to throw what. So think of it like golf. If you have two 5-irons on top of each other, it's the question of which 5-iron to hit, and you can second guess yourself which ones you should be hitting. Where I would rather have a 5, a 7, a 9, and it just becomes obvious where that spot is that you use that club, and we approach it the same way in this tournament.
Wise thoughts there. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Steve, I appreciate your time. Alex, thank you so much as always. I know you're here a lot more frequently, you being our R&D manager, and Steve, you're kind of a special guest to us here today to Utah. So, but thank you for everything you do. Much appreciated. And Alex, same as well. And in Storm Nation, I think a few things to take away here is just, number one, the importance of spare shooting. This is a tournament that has demanding lane conditions. Number one, make your spares. Once you do that, it's going to help give you a little bit more freedom, kind of loosen up your swing, give you some more confidence, and allow you to then make better first ball shots and choices on strategy. So if you make your spares, you're going to be in the right frame of mind, and you're going to have better performance out there at the Open Championships as well. We've got a strong tech support here at Storm as well. You can call us anytime, 1-800-369-4402. We'll be happy to answer your questions. And we also have an excellent staff there at the tournament site in the Storm booth. So you can go see Mark Anderson and his staff, and they'll be able to help make some recommendations as well for balls to drill and what kind of strategies are working out there on the lanes. So thanks again, Steve. Thank you, Alex, and Storm Nation. Appreciate your time and attention. And remember,